2020 Top Update Training for Logging Professionals. My name is Wayne Steffen and I am the Chairman of the Forestry Association of South Carolina. We appreciate you taking the time from your busy schedule to attend this training. Continuing education is critical and required to remain certified as a professional logger. I've spent 45 years in procurement as a forester and procurement manager. My main responsibility throughout my career has been supplying wood yards, paper mills, chip mills, sawmills, and plywood mills with wood. My job has been logging mills, but I or my pickup truck have never delivered one stick of wood across anybody's scales. If it had not been for loggers, you important people out there, I would not have been successful in my career. The high public profile that loggers have, the job you do, is more critical than any other part of our supply chain. Logging certainly has the biggest effect on the public's perception of our whole industry. Having this training is a critical part in keeping government regulations to a minimum and not imposing undue cost on the logging industry and our forest industry. The Forestry Association of South Carolina is working on many things that help our forest industry and in particular the logging portion of our supply chain. We are working in partnership with Team Safe Trucking. We are working on legislation to reform and increase truck weight limits for unmanufactured forest products so that we can be on a level playing field with our neighbors in North Carolina and Georgia. We are supporting liability reform to abolish the deep pocket rule and promoting efforts to lower commercial auto insurance rates, which are both a tremendous expense on log truck insurance. We are also working on maintaining the tax exemptions on logging equipment and supplies and increasing CDL training so more drivers are available to haul forest products. As I stated before, logging is the most important part of our supply chain because of its high public profile. The TOP program is a critical part of green certification programs. It is also the right thing for us to do when it comes to our environmental responsibility and passing on sustainable resources to our children and grandchildren. I appreciate everybody that is here today participating in this training. Thank you for your time, efforts, commitment, and good work.
Timber harvesting operations are not located on permanent sites. We must move our equipment from job site to job site. We're going to look today to see how we can legally and safely move our logging equipment on the roads of South Carolina. Remember, we must move legally and we must move safely. Hi, I'm Crad James, President of the South Carolina Timber Producers Association, and we're here today with Joey Austin of Austin Logging Incorporated from Gaston and Corporal Lee Cato of the South Carolina State Transport Police. We're here today to see how to securely and safely and legally transport logging equipment on the lowboy. We're happy to have Corporal Cato with us today so that he can explain all the necessary points of attachment and securement, because one thing we want to be very, very sure we are is legal and safe moving equipment on our state's highways.
Okay, so I've pulled the tractor up on the trailer. I've butted the blade against the frame of the trailer to secure it from rolling there, and I have let the grapple on the back all the way down against the trailer so it's not swinging. Released all the hydraulic pressure, and everything should be ready to tie down.
So, we're getting ready to transport this piece of equipment. One of the main things we need to know is how heavy this equipment is. Being that the weight of this equipment, we have to have half the weight of this equipment in tie downs. So if we have a 50,000 pound piece of equipment, we need 25,000 pounds worth of tie downs and binders. That way we're going to safely be able to transport this equipment. And we need 4 points of contact because it's going to be more than 10,000 pounds. But when we also are transporting equipment, we need to make sure that our binders and tie downs are in good working order, not just the equipment. Because if our binders aren't working well, then we're going to lose the equipment and possibly put ourselves in a situation where the company is going to have a liability problem if we cause a collision or unfortunately maybe a death. So make sure that when we inspect our equipment, we also inspect our chains and tie downs to make sure they aren't wallowing out in the middle or getting thin and need to be replaced. So one of the good rules of operation is probably to have them on a cycle that every 6 months or so we switch our chains and tie downs out to make sure they're good and strong to hold on this piece of equipment that we've invested a substantial amount of money in. All right, so we've got our equipment loaded up here. It's been brought all the way to the front of the trailer to prevent any forward movement in the event of a sudden braking application. We've got our first tie down in place here. It is nice and tight. It comes to the frame of the vehicle because most of your vehicles will have a manufactured attachment point for where your tie downs need to go. You should never try to weld on an additional point because it's not going to have the same structural rigidity as it will coming straight from the factory. Another thing to keep in mind is anything that we add, even though we're trying to make it an attachment point, should something happen and that attachment point fails, it is going to put the company in liability status and in jeopardy. So we don't want to do that. But we got our binder tied down, we got our chains locked down, a good strong chain, so we're good here on this side. And once we're going to do this, we're going to do this on the other side as well. Because of the size of this equipment, you need a minimum of 4 tie down points. With any time you have any piece of equipment that articulates in the middle, you have to secure that point. So we have a lock bar installed in this vehicle. If a lock bar is not available or it's broken or defective, then you must run a chain from one side to the other side to secure that point in the middle. Again, using safe chains, safe binders that will match up to the weight of the vehicle that has been there, that 50% rule that we discussed earlier. So we have a lock bar here. The parking brake is also set on the vehicle, so we are good to go. And now we're going to move to the rear of the vehicle and secure the rear attachment points and anything any of the grappling hooks and any other appendages on the vehicle. Now we have our 2 points that we've attached on the back for our third and fourth point. As you can see, they're wrapped around the axles, the chains are wrapped around, and they're crisscrossed. Now, you don't have to crisscross them. You can run that point to that side and the point on this side to this side. As long as you have 2 individual points on the back, you're going to be in compliance. You can run them crisscross, but like I say, we've got our chains here. Now, we don't want to attach to anything that's not a manufactured part or one of these weaker points, say these fins up here. We want to be on a heavy duty part. If they don't have a portion on there, run it around your axles. Run it around the axles, and that way it is going to hold this vehicle down. Because in theory, with good load securement, what we want to be able to do is pick this trailer up, turn it upside down, and the load not fall off. That is what our good load securement practices are going to do. Next, we're going to move on to our attachments. We've got our grapple load down here. We've got another chain run through to prevent it from moving, swinging around left and right. But on this part, you do not have to run 2 different chains on it. Okay, one chain from one side through the other just to make sure that this does not move will suffice. And it'll get you right in line with those safe loading practices that we talked about. All right, so we've got our last chain here, and it is going across our blade on the front to make sure that there is no upward movement of this. Now, sometimes they'll be loaded onto a trailer, and it's not going to be all the way bumped up to the front, so you're definitely going to have it. And depending on how your trailer is made, if you can drop that bar in there, this blade in the front, to keep it from coming up, then that will suffice. but for good safe loading practices, let's go and throw a chain on it anyway. So, to recap what we've done, we've got a piece of machinery that's over 10,000 pounds. It's going to require a minimum of 4 tie-down points, 4 separate tie-down points. In addition to that, we have an articulation point where we place the lock bar, or a chain if a lock bar is not available. Our parking brake has been set. All of our attachment points have been secured with good chains, good binders, nothing is sagging, and nothing is damaged. So we are ready to transport this load to wherever it goes. And remember, there's no shortcuts in safety. One last reminder before we get ready to go. Always take the time to do a good pre-trip on your vehicle before you leave the woods. Make sure your lights are working, your tires are good, don't have any sticks or debris in between your dual sets of tires. All your lights are working on the back end. And when we check our trailer before we leave, these are just leaves. You know, no harm, no foul there. Big pieces of rocks, other debris, maybe some change you may have forgotten about, always give it a good look over to make sure there's no loose dunnage on the trailer, because that is an out-of-service violation, and it's also a safety hazard. And the best thing we want to do is we want to maximize our profitability and limit our liability.
Remember, transporting timber harvesting equipment is a critical part of our industry, going from job site to job site. Always remember, move safe and move legal. It's certainly been an educational moment here today, and we hope this will help you in your business to know how to legally and safely transport logging equipment. We want to thank Joey Austin and Corporal Lee Cato for their time today to be with us, to take us through this exercise so that we know that we are compliant with the law and we are safe on our state's highways. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
We're here with Bob Lusher, president of Great Woods Companies LLC in Bennettsville, South Carolina, and J.J. Lemire. He is the loss control director for Forestry Mutual Insurance Company. We're going to talk about safety in loading and unloading track machines, and also safety around the machine. We're also going to look at securement of a track machine so that you can transport your logging equipment legally and safely.
In today's presentation, what we want to do is to be able to show you how to be safe when you're around the equipment that's being loaded or unloaded. We want to show you the areas where you may be injured. We want to teach you how to keep your hands, your feet, your face out of the areas that can get you harmed.
One of the big things we want to showcase, getting on and off any equipment, track equipment, trucks, rubber tired equipment, is make sure you always keep 3 points of contact when you're entering or exiting a vehicle. I always tell my drivers to stand, wait till the truck is unhooked from a detachable trailer and stand off to the side before they put the ramps down. That way there are no area of contact to get pinched.
In this scenario, you saw Bob do some things that are of noteworthy for safety. As he was lowering the trailer down off of the hydraulic lift, he stood to the side and he looked before he did it so that his feet were not up underneath the front end of the trailer. We've had some crushing injuries in the past where an operator has not taken the time to look for foot placement, and that individual has had some serious problems with his feet. The other thing that he did is he told us about standing off to the side so that in the event that any of the brakes on the trucks may have failed, he would not be between the trailer and the truck. These ramps are pretty heavy. one of the things we want to do is to make sure that we're using proper lifting techniques so that you don't hurt your lower backs as you're lifting this heavy weight.
What we tried to do, if you notice, we always try to have the operator load the machine and the truck driver to guide the operator on. That way the machine is put on straight. You know the weight is supposed to be where it's supposed to be. If something happens to the equipment operator or the truck driver, you have two people there, so somebody is there to help the other person with first aid or to call emergency services. The other thing we want to touch base on is loggers are not making money when they're moving. We're always in a hurry when we're trying to move. Usually we're doing this a little slower because we're making a video and trying to make sure we drill in and becomes a habit with the safety parts of loading and unloading a machine. But usually there's 3 or 4 guys around when we're trying to move, trying to get a machine on and get it chained down as quickly as we can to get to the next track because we need to make money. But guys, we can't put a price on safety. We need to take our time and think through what we're doing so somebody does not get injured. What we're trying to do when we're securing a machine, whether it's a piece of tracked equipment, whether it's a rubber tired piece of equipment, is we need to have it secured from 4 independent points that need to be independent of one another. Whatever attachment is on the machine needs to be secured. So on this track cutter, we're going to do 4 binders from the tracks to the frame of the trailer. They're all independent. They're all rated for whatever the safety rating is for whatever your machine weighs for. We're going to secure the boom with 1 other chain and 1 other binder in the rear.
All right, another consideration for safety is that as you are securing the load, whether it be with the binders, with straps, chains, whatever it may be, there are some known pinch points that you need to be aware of. As you're hooking up the chains down here at the bottom, one of the things is that the weight of some of these items are enough that if you get your finger caught in between them as you are tightening the binder, you can pinch your fingers. On the implements themselves, there is a chance that if you do not relieve the hydraulic pressure, you have an opportunity to get your hands in areas down here at the bottom or up here near the chain, that if that implement moves at the time that you are securing your chains and binders, that you could have a crushing injury.
This trailer is equipped with strobe lights that are independent from the lighting system of the truck, so if we were to be unloading or loading on the side of the road, we can keep these strobe lights on to try to inform the public that we're here. A lot of them don't pay attention, but we're trying to do the right thing and trying to reduce our liability.
When we're moving logging equipment safely and legally, always have your oversized sign on the front and the back of the lowboy. That way, oncoming traffic and traffic behind you can see the sign and know this is an oversized load. Now, we loaded a track feller buncher today, and the securement points were already mentioned. 4 independent points and securing the feller buncher head. But the same is true when you're moving a bulldozer. 4 independent points plus the blade has to be secured because it is an attachment. all because it's safety, safety, safety. We want to move our logging equipment safely and legally.
As a reminder, we just want to make sure that you take away some items with you. Number one, no employee's injury is worth being in such a hurry. That person is one of your most valuable resources. Take the time to do it right. Doing it right over and over again produces a habit, and good habits are one of your greatest tools against injuries.
I want to reinforce what JJ said. My employees are my greatest asset. We all should value our employees and value their safety and their health. We're one of the few companies around, we pay all of our drivers by the hour. I don't care if it takes them an extra 10 minutes, an extra 15 minutes to put this machine on safely, to reduce my liability going down the road, to have the driver safe going down the road, to take his time going where he's going, especially with a machine of this size. Our employees are our greatest asset in a small business.
We want to thank Bob Lusher of Great Woods Companies and J.J. Lamar with Forestry Mutual Insurance Company for helping us with this securement video today.
I'm Holly Welch, the Environmental Program Manager for the South Carolina Forestry Commission. Before we get started on this year's video, I want to introduce you to the BMP foresters from across the state and encourage you to contact them whenever you have BMP questions or issues.
I'm Michael Broom, the BMP forester for the Piedmont region. I handle counties in the upstate, north of I-20 and west of I-77. Please contact me if you have any issues in this area of the state.
I'm Eric West, the PD Region BMP Forester. I can assist you with issues in the northeastern part of the state, mainly above the Santee River and east of Interstate 77.
And I'm Andrew Williams, the BMP Forester for the Coastal Region. I handle the low country below I-20 and the Santee River down to Jasper County. Please call me if you have any questions.
As we are all aware, roads, both woods roads and highways, are a very controversial topic these days. When it gets wet, landowners get upset as the condition of their road degrades, and county officials, residents, and travelers get upset about mud tracking out onto the main road. As areas around the state continue to grow, the small farm-to-market roads that were well accustomed to log truck traffic and muddy tires are now growing up with subdivisions, schools, and stores. Along with the issues of road condition, there are also concerns about the lack of encroachment permits when loggers punch in new road entrances and not properly crossing or cleaning out roadside ditches when a logging job is finished. Counties, cities, and the general public are pushing for more regulation on temporary road entrances to try to fix this problem. I'm here with Scotty Ferguson, the Stormwater Manager for Pickens County, to talk about logging road entrance issues. So Scotty, what's the biggest issue you see with log truck entrances onto the county roads?
Mud on the road, basically. When mud is tracked on the road, it becomes a safety hazard for vehicular traffic, and it also costs the taxpayers money because staff has to go out and clean up the roads and maintain the ditches to prevent accidents. Sometimes the ditches get filled in with sediment, and it prevents stormwater from flowing. So it can cause flooding on the road. So at the end of the day, it just becomes a hazard, and it also costs money.
All right, so why do these issues matter to the county?
Well, obviously it's a cost because it costs the taxpayers money to have staff go out and clean the roads and equipment, and it's also a liability because we could be liable if a car has a wreck or something and if it's raining and it hits the mud or water goes across the road, it can become a liability to the county as well.
What would you like to see done differently than what is normally happening day to day?
Just if the loggers would maintain the entrances where they're coming in and out of the road, and just be mindful that, you know, they are tracking on the road, they have heavy equipment, and just kind of, if they do track on the road, clean it up in a timely manner. And then be mindful of the ditches if they're getting any sediment in the ditches. Sometimes when they turn, they'll turn a little wide and they may crack a pipe or something like that, a culvert that's underneath the road. Just be mindful of those things and just basically keep everything on site.
In this video, we will discuss using wooden bridge mats as an alternative to rock on your haul roads and at road entrances. Hopefully these ideas will help avoid road issues and allow you to keep your wheels turning even when the weather gets wet.
Some of you already use mats as part of your everyday logging activities. Some may use them when working on especially wet sites, and others of you may have never used them at all. These mats are traditionally used in the lower part of the state to allow logging crews to operate on wet, low-strength soils without having to make a significant investment in geotextile and rock.
This same concept can be used to minimize the impact of your logging job. Mats can be placed at road entrances, along wet portions of a haul road, and on the log deck to keep truck tires out of the mud. While there's an upfront cost in purchasing the mats, they have the potential to save you money on rock cost. They also can save you on costly downtime and post-harvest BMP work, especially with the wet winters we've been having lately.
Hi, I'm Roger Cantley. Work with Smith Logging Incorporated out of Andrews, South Carolina. A lot of the benefits, we're able to work a lot of days we wouldn't be able to work. As you see here, we've coming across this field without the mats, the trucks just wouldn't be able to make it across. The drier part of the field that's out in the sun all the time has been able to hold up pretty well, but as you get over in the shade and they don't really want to cut the buffer zone beside the road, it stays shaded almost all day long, so it never dries out. So it helps us to keep working when we normally wouldn't be working.
Y'all came out to one of our logging jobs that we have over here in UG, and we had to put down some mats to, you know, to keep the guys running. And some of the benefits of having these mats are you don't lose production. You don't have to sit out a day. You're going to lose a little bit of time just getting them set, but the juice is worth the squeeze on that, because it's going to take you a couple of hours to get this set up and you're rolling again, versus having to sit out a day or two. Once you complete the harvest or the thinning or whatever it is that you're doing, and you pull these mats up, your road reconstruction and your finish work is cut. I mean, it's minimal. We can pull these mats up and dress everything back up to the original shape that it was in no time. Whereas if we didn't have them, I mean, you're got to wait till it dries, and then once it dries, you can come in and work it, and that's just too many moving parts. And these mats just really simplify. So the minimal time that it takes to put them down, it saves you days in the end game.
By having the mats and being able to do that, instead of coming and putting rock down at the entrance, and you only may be on a small sail, only there a couple of weeks, you pick those mats back up and take them with you, where if you put the rock down, you leave that rock there. You just left all that money. The mats you're picking up and you're taking with you to the next job. And at the end of the day, you save yourself a little money.
The mats range from $350 to $550 each, depending on what wood they are made from, the configuration of the boards, and the supplier.
Most contractors use a 2-ply style mat where boards are laid lengthwise and another set is bolted on top at a 90-degree angle to the bottom layer. This gives the truck tires a smooth running surface and gives the grapple something to hold on to in order to move them. However, there are a few different styles, and which one you use is a personal preference.
Yeah, these are full cover mats we refer to as Virginia mats. They can be driven on diagonal, crossways, or longways. And you can even put them crossways and drop a trailer with landing gear here when you got to drop a trailer in the wet swamp. And these seem to be holding up really well. And then these are
just a standard mat. You can only drive on them one way. We've added 2 boards in the center instead of 1. Make them hold up better when you're picking them up. They're all made out of true 2x8s, mixed hardwoods. Some people want all oak, but I've had better luck with gum and mixed. The oak just is so brittle that it breaks.
Mats can be purchased new or used, and in some locations can be rented. We spoke to several contractors that use mats on a regular basis. As you would expect, the longevity of the mats depends on how carefully they are handled when being loaded, unloaded, and positioned on the sail.
Probably one of the biggest questions in everybody's mind is how long will they last, because they cost over $500 per mat. And the longevity of them is how well you take care of them when you move them. If you're rough moving them, they're not going to last very long. Like I said earlier, we have some here that's over 4 years old, but we try to be careful when we move them. We try to keep them stacked up, shake the mud off of them, keep them stacked up so they don't rot. And I don't have any that's actually sitting down on the dirt. I've got some old de-limbing gate that makes a good little rack to keep them up off the ground. And so the longevity, once they get about 5 years old, you're pretty much, most of them are to the point they're not usable anymore. But it all that goes into how well you take care of them when you're loading, unloading, and moving them around with the skidder and the ground that you're putting them on. Stumps, if you have a stump that's in the middle of the mat, where the mat's rocking back and forth every time the truck travels, it's putting stress on those boards, and that one may not last as long. It's a lot of factors go into that, but if you be careful about where you put them and handle them carefully, you'll get 4 to 5 years out of them without any problem. When we're moving them with the loader, and it all depends on how we're loading them. If you're loading them flat, it's just, you just take your time. It's not like loading wood that you just pick it up and sling it. It's just to pick it up easy. Try not to crush it. You can't have somebody with a heavy hand on the grapple, closing the grapple. You just want to pick it up just enough so that the grapple just barely closes around the wood, and you can pick it up and it'll hold right there, and you can stack them down.
They can be easily transported on a log trailer, lowboy, or regular trailer from job to job. They can be unloaded with the loader and then carried into position with a skidder or a track machine.
On some trailers we have the second and third bolsters spread out enough that they're like, I have 16 feet between them, so I can lay the mat just like flat on the frame in between those bolsters, and it enables me to put more because they're laying flat. If I only have to haul 3 or 4 to a site, I'll stack them up, and when I load them, I'll grab them on the outside board and be real easy with it and pick it up and basically lay it down in between this 3rd and 4th standard, because on the plantation trailers, your back bolsters are always, the framework is always lower. If you put them up on the front, you have to be real careful that you're not coming in a place that has a low-hanging power line or anything like that you don't want to catch and tear down. So I usually try to load them on the back end, and if you start getting over 5 on it, you start getting above the top of the bolster, and the bolsters are normally at the legal height, so you don't want to get up over that.
And I've noticed that when people haul them flat, whether it be in a log trailer behind a pickup, that they don't seem to get broke up as bad as when you got to pick them up and stand them straight up and then load them in like putting it in a slot.
To ensure the mats last as long as possible, they need to be set in place before the road becomes overly wet and rutted. If equipment runs over the road and it becomes unlevel, the mats won't have a flat surface to sit on. When a truck runs over top of them, they are more likely to snap and break.
To keep that going, if we see a place that we think there's a potential to have a problem with the road, we'll try to go ahead and have them put them down. As you saw in some of the other videos, our entrance, we knew that was going to be a problem where we drove through the little buffer to get out on the county road. We before we ever moved the equipment in, we went ahead and had that wide span so the truck had room to make their swing and keep the trailer up as much as possible, to keep them up before. That way we still had solid ground and level ground we were putting them on, instead of trying to put them over a rut this deep. You just put so much stress on the boards, you start tearing them up.
On sites where the deck is located close to the road, the entire running area the trucks are on can be matted, essentially keeping the truck tires dry from the time they leave the pavement until they get back onto the road.
If used properly, wooden mats can be used in place of rock for your road entrance. The concept is the same as a rock entrance. It provides a hard surface to knock some of the mud off the truck tires and allows the truck to transition from off-road to on-road without causing damage to the edge of the paved surface. If mats are to be used at the entrance, they must be installed correctly. The entire width of the road needs to be covered, wide enough to account for the trailer swing so that the wheels don't track off of the mats. They need to be set so that they are at the same level or slightly above the level of the paved road. If they are below the level of the pavement, the weight of the truck will cause the pavement to crack and will cause damage to the roadway.
The good things about the mats is the trailers, when you're driving straight, you know, everything's tracking fine, the trailers are tracking good, there's really no issues, but where you come into an issue is when the truck has to turn, or there's a little bit of a jog in the line that we're running, or back behind me, for instance, the trucks are making a 90-degree left-hand turn to get back to the mill. So we had to, we had to widen that access a little bit and kind of pyramid the mat. So we went from 4, 3, 2 to 1, just to account for the swing of that trailer. And that way that the back of it doesn't track off the mats. And having a few of the mats just before you pull out onto the highway, it gives a chance for the tires to clear themselves of mud, and you're not tracking mud out on the highway and causing a dangerous place right in front of your deck for cars to be driving through. The last thing we want to do is give a bad impression to somebody driving by of our logging job.
When you are finished with the job, the mats are lifted, shaken off, loaded up, and moved to the next track or back to the shop for storage. As we mentioned before, they should last several moves if they are cared for properly.
Yeah, and the easiest way I found to move them was with a skid steer. And the one that we've got back here is about a $10,000 skid steer. We use it all the time. Construction jobs out here. But where it works really good is if this gets packed down in the dirt so tight that mud starts coming up, the mud might be that deep on top of it. You can take them forks and pick it up out the mud and be gentle with it where you can't with logging equipment a lot of times. And flip it upside down and then flip it again, and it'll clean all the mud off of it. And then we've got a little trailer hitch up there that was actually to move trailers around with, how we figured it out. But it works just like right, where you can slide the forks under and pick them up, and it's out the way to flip them.
We hope this video has been beneficial to you and encourages you to consider this alternative to rock to minimize your impact when the weather turns wet. For better or worse, South Carolina is a different place than it was 20 years ago. As the conflict between growing population and rural land use grows, a solution will be reached. If we as foresters and contractors do not find a solution to the roads issue, county government, state government, or the Department of Transportation will. Let's show them that the forest industry can be proactive, not requiring additional regulations to do the right thing, just like you do every day by using best management practices.
Hi there, Smart Drivers. Rick with Smart Drive Test talking to you today about roundabouts and truck aprons. The first time I encountered a roundabout in a big truck was in Australia in 2002. I was working to get my license back so I could become a commercial driver, and unfortunately I kind of plowed into the roundabout. The examiner, fortunately at the time, because nobody was hurt and there was just a little bit of kerfluffle and some hard braking on the part of other traffic, kind of turned a blind eye, and I was successful in getting my license back in Australia. But I will tell you that roundabouts, whether you're in a car, a light truck, or you're in a big truck or any large vehicle, is a bit of a learning curve. But roundabouts are designed for big trucks, and truck aprons are specifically for that purpose. Unfortunately, engineers have designed roundabouts for such purposes, but the public education hasn't been there. People don't know about truck aprons. So what we're going to do today, we're going to talk to you about truck aprons. We'll be right back with that information. Stick around. Hi there, Smart Drivers. Rick with Smart Drive Test. Welcome back. Standing here at a big industrial roundabout just south of Armstrong, BC. Armstrong, BC is 4.5 hours due east of Vancouver, British Columbia in the great country of Canada. Talking to you today about roundabouts and truck aprons. Roundabouts are in fact designed for big trucks, and the way that big trucks are accommodated with their larger size and off tracking is with truck aprons. Engineers design truck aprons, but unfortunately the information about truck aprons has not been disseminated to the public for whatever reason. There's a couple of engineering features that might cause people to be deceived and drivers to be deceived about why they can't use them. The first is that it's colored stamped concrete. In other words, it looks red from a distance, and it also, because it's stamped with a pattern, looks like a paving stone, when in fact it is actually stamped reinforced concrete designed to hold the larger weight of big semi-trucks. The second thing about truck aprons is that they are slightly elevated, and the reason that they're slightly elevated is to try and keep cars and light trucks off the truck apron and cutting off a shorter distance through the roundabout. So there's two features that may deceive drivers, especially drivers of larger vehicles, as to why in fact they can't go on the truck apron. But the truck aprons are specifically designed for large commercial vehicles and designed to compensate for the off-tracking of the semi-trailer. Off-tracking is simply the shorter path that the trailer tires take in relation to the steer tires. They take a shorter path, and therefore they're going to run up over the truck apron. You can see here in the image that there's lots of black marks on the truck apron in this industrial area where the semi-trailers have gone up over that. And the other reason for truck aprons is they're not only found at roundabouts, they're also found at slip lanes. One of the things about turning trucks is drivers need to minimize their impediment to other traffic, and truck aprons are designed to do that at both roundabouts and at slip lanes. And you can see here behind me, and I'll get you a better image of that, of the slip lanes. The slip lanes also have truck aprons for when the trucks are turning. They don't have to go out into the other lane of traffic if there's multiple lanes that they're merging onto, and they reduce their impediment to other traffic to try and improve traffic flow through the intersections. So slip lanes are also equipped with truck aprons to try and facilitate the movement of semi-trucks through the roundabouts. So truck aprons are designed to move larger vehicles through roundabouts and minimize their impediment to other traffic. Now, the news story that prompted this video was a story out of Wisconsin that legislators had given the right-of-way at roundabouts to semi-trucks. Now, as I've said in many a video, the right-of-way is never taken. The right-of-way is always given. So if truck drivers plow into an intersection knowing that they have the right-of-way, that is somewhat problematic, because everybody has to watch out for what they're doing. They have to give the right of way to other traffic. Now, semi-truck drivers also need to know that the roundabouts are in fact designed with truck aprons, and those truck aprons are in the center to compensate for the off-tracking of the semi-trailer. And it's important that everybody look out for what they're doing as well. When truck drivers go through roundabouts, it's on their sight side, so they can look out the window and see if there are other vehicles in and around them. As well, car drivers, make sure you give lots of room to semi-trucks that are turning, because these trucks have huge blind spots, and if they run into you, it's probably because they didn't see you, or maybe they were looking somewhere else. It wasn't because of intent or they were being malicious. There are incidents of road rage, but for the most part, that wasn't what it was about. So in conclusion, most roundabouts are designed with truck aprons. The truck aprons are colored, stamped concrete. And from a distance, it looks like paving stones, but it's reinforced concrete, so designed for semi-trailers to go up onto, and as well, they're elevated to deter light trucks and cars from going on. So it looks a little different, and some of the drivers may not use them. You'll also find truck aprons at slip lanes, and it's to have larger vehicles minimize their impediment to other traffic when they're turning so that they don't have to go into that other lane. The off-tracking of the semi-trailer can simply go up over the truck apron, and they can stay in that inside lane if they're merging onto a multi-lane highway, as you can see here in the image. I'm Rick with Smart Drive Test. Thanks very much for watching. If you like what you see here, share, subscribe, leave a comment down in the comment section. All of that helps us out. As well, hit that thumbs up button. Check out the videos below if you're endeavoring to get your CDL license. Lots of great information there. As well, if you're endeavoring as a career as a truck or bus driver, great information to help you out with your day-to-day tasks as a truck or bus driver. If you're on a mobile device, check out the cards in the upper right-hand corner. Those two will give you links to the videos. Question for my smart drivers. Did you know about truck aprons, and do you use truck aprons to minimize your impediment to other traffic when you're turning? Leave a comment down in the comment section. All that helps out the new drivers entering the industry. Thanks again for watching. Good luck on your road test. Remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. Have a great day. Bye now. That's awesome. He just drove right over the slip lane. That's awesome. Thanks, dude.
There's an expression about knowing your limits, which typically serves as a warning to individuals attempting to complete a challenge they're not physically or mentally prepared to achieve successfully. Well, the same can be said for those in the forest products industry when it comes time to completing a harvest operation of any method or size. We're here today with Jerry Tugwell, a highly regarded consulting forester. Jerry has been out in the woods for 30+ years, and we'll be exploring the keys to keeping our harvest operations on the right track.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am a forester, a consulting forester. I work mostly for landowners, private companies. I've done some work for some municipalities, mostly here in the Piedmont, although I've worked on projects from Virginia to Florida. But a lot of times what I get involved with is timber appraisals and timber sales for landowners. And that's what's going on here today, where we are here today in Chatham County. This tract has been in the process of being harvested, and will also be replanted probably next January, February, that time frame.
Whenever approaching a new project, it's important to get off on the right foot.
The first step for someone who's marking the property lines, whether it's a surveyor or a forester, is to procure whatever paperwork they can find on the property that is accurate and will help them in locating and marking the property lines. Ideally, if you could get a recorded plat survey, that would be really a good starting point, but many times tracts are not surveyed. So the next step would be to get the deed description of the subject tract you're working on, and also the adjoining properties. And then you match up the meets and bounds description of the subject property with the tracts that adjoin you and see whether or not they match. And if they match, then you have a good starting point on locating the corners and property lines.
So what are some of the resources out there you could actually double check you're on the right boundary lines?
Good question. Well, the first thing I look at is the tax map. And we have one here today of this property. It's an aerial photograph also, but it shows things like the roads, the county road, and I have marked on here the fences and the creeks. This is a good starting point, but it is not something that you would consider primary evidence for locating property lines. The deed description and any recorded surveys are really where you want to go. I rarely put much credence in what the landowner may tell me, not because they're trying to give me bad information, it's just not something that they're trained in. There may be
giving me information that their father told them or their grandfather, who also was not trained. So I don't discount what they tell me, I just don't necessarily put it to the top of the pecking order as far as information I consider valid. So I start with the deed description and any surveys that I can locate. A corner, which would be like an iron pipe, maybe a concrete monument, something like this. On this particular tract, I knew that the property to the south was cut over, and I assumed that these folks that cut this property would have maybe located their property line. So I went back and found this corner on their property, and I used that as a starting point, and I confirmed the distance from here to this corner with my landowner's deed, and that's how I started. And then I went around the whole property using the meets and bounds description from their deed description to locate and flag the property lines. And when I mark property lines, I generally use pink ribbon. It's very visible. The loggers really like it. They can see it well. To me, it's a little better than paint, because paint is good, but you have to be not 90% sure, but 110% sure, because once you put it on the tree, it's difficult to remove it or either paint over it. So, and the loggers have told me over the years they really prefer pink ribbon because it's so visible. And a lot of people who are not in the forestry industry do not use pink ribbon because it's a little more expensive. Surveyors many times will use orange or blue. But loggers and foresters a lot of times will use pink, and the loggers seem to prefer that, and it's very visible to them.
Do you actually give them a map as well?
Absolutely. There's 2 or 3 different ways that they could get this information. If they're working through a timber buyer, many of whom are North Carolina Forestry Association members, and many times those folks are very reputable, and they will go over this map that I provided to the buyer before the tract is ever sold. This tract was a bid sale, so the buyers received this map through an email. So they had the benefit of it while they were looking at it to put in their bid. So they would many times give this map to their logger before he moves to the site. Or the worst case scenario would be when I usually come and check on the loggers either the day or the day after they move on the job, and I usually bring them a map also. And many times when I say, do you have a map? They say yes, our timber buyer gave it to us. Or either if they haven't gotten one yet, I can give them one. And I usually have the file with me in the truck, and I have extra maps. And now I take that opportunity to go over the map with them, make sure they know about anything that's out of the ordinary. Sometimes there will be things like an old home place or something that has some historical significance. I usually will flag that off also with pink ribbon. So to protect that, I have flagged off old grave sites, lots of different things that have significance either from an archaeological or historical standpoint, or maybe just it's significant to the landowner. They don't want a little particular area, they want it left intact.
How do you determine your special sites? Is that purely conversations with your landowner, or?
It is somewhat based on conversations, but also when I do my timber inventory and appraisal on this property, I go through here on a grid using generally a hand compass. Many times people will use GPSs to do that. I have access to one, but I usually use a hand compass when I do my cruise lines, and when I am putting in my sample points, I'm also looking for things other than just the timber. I'm looking for creeks, old home places, burial sites. Sometimes I stumble upon things like marijuana. It just happens to be there, and sometimes the landowner, most of the time, they don't know it's there. So those are the kind of things you find when you do the inventory and the timber appraisal at the beginning of the project.
Maps play an important role in any harvest operation. In addition to boundaries and the recognition of special sites, a map can assist in the planning of the operation by providing valuable information about the tract.
You do a lot of prep work before you ever hand this map out, before you ever go and walk your lines.
Very much.
You're investing in the tract to make sure that everything goes right so you don't end up in a timber.
Absolutely. I'm lazy and I'm selfish. I want to get the work done right up front, and I want the logger to do his job well, and I don't want to have to be called out here every hour for the next 2 weeks because he didn't know where the property line is. I tell these guys also when they first start, I tell them, if you get over to the property line and you don't see my pink ribbon, get back in the middle, call me, and I'll come fix it. Every now and then, some helpful neighbor will pull down my property line tape because, for whatever reason, they think they're going to stop the logging job or whatever. You know, you had it marked wrong, which, you know, I'm not perfect, it can happen, but that's just a smoke screen. But usually I've done my work up front, and hopefully it's marked correctly.
Let's walk me through on how I'm going to, the ABCs of reading this map.
Okay. Well, if you take your compass out, and now, of course, a lot of the iPhones even have compasses on them, so you don't have to have a compass. You can put your compass, set your compass on north, and here's the north arrow on the map. It says north at the top. All maps should have a north arrow and a scale to really be considered a map. So you put your compass over here on the edge, and you turn the whole map and compass until the arrow lines up in the red inside the compass, okay?
Is that the red in the shed?
The red in the shed. So now we are oriented. And the top of the map is north, the bottom is south, the right of the map is east, and the left of the map where my thumb is here is west. And if you look just to our north, straight ahead of us, you will see this road here, Moon Lindley Road. If you look just to our west, which is to our left, you will see a small creek that I have painted off with blue paint, and that would be this creek here. So we are just about right here. So we have a road to our north, a creek to our west, the property line to our east, and another small creek if you continue going south. And so now we are considered oriented. We are oriented with the map. And it helps us to see where we are on the property. It helps us to be able to convey to the logger, there's a creek down here about 400 feet away, things that we can convey to him that is important to him about, so that he can make plans to cross that creek in the right way, maintaining the water quality standards that we need in this state.
What are some of the other details you highlight for your loggers?
Good question. On this particular track, if you'll notice on the west side of this property line here all the way down from the Moon Lindley Road all the way to the southern property line is a fence. And I have that with a cross, and I also have it down at the bottom. It says do not damage the fence. And of course, when the loggers look at this map, they see the fence and they know before they ever start there's a fence on the west side of the map, property, and they know not to crash into it and damage it. And also another thing that I try to do, when I do my maps and I do my field work, I keep the same standards from track to track so that I don't change the rules on these guys every time. I don't flag property lines with pink on one track and then the next track it's blue and the next track it's orange. I use pink all the time. I paint my creek buffers with blue paint all the time. I mark the fences the same way all the time. So when they pick up a map, and I've been doing this now many years, work with a lot of loggers, the same ones over and over, they don't have to relearn a new project each time with me. The only thing they need to concern themselves with is, where's the best place for me to put my loading deck? Am I going to need to build a road because it's too far to the back side of the track? Those are the kind of things they're interested in. Where do I cross the creek? And by looking at this map and the features on the map, they can have some insight into how better do their job.
How can they use this map to estimate how far creeks are from the road or from their logging deck?
They certainly can, and they don't even need a ruler if they don't have one. If you'll notice at the bottom of the map, it says 1 inch equals 450 feet plus or minus. It could be 455, it could be 445, but it's in that neighborhood. So they can even take the first digit of their index finger, which is about 1 inch, and they can just measure, just kind of quickly, just back to the back side of the map, and it looks like it's going to be about 3 inches, so they know right off the bat it's going to be 1,300, 1,400 feet, and they know that's the kind of information they need to make a decision on whether or not to build a road. And so 1,300, 1,400 feet is a distance that they can certainly skid without having to incur additional costs for road building. They can put one deck on this site and skid the wood to one location and not have to engage a bulldozer for any extra work. So Chris, we're coming over here to the property line now. This is some information that have learned over the years. It's nothing quite this useful was taught to me at NC State. I like my education over. This is a little more practical. If you notice on the map here, I have a circle with a check mark. And part of this is for my own benefit. I can pick this map up 3 or 4 years from now and know that when I did this project, that corner was found and located. And down at the bottom of the map, it says corner found and flag glow pink. So the logger knows when he comes over here that corner was found and was flagged. And if he comes over here and it's not flagged, then he knows that maybe someone's been over here and taken the tape down. And in that case, he needs to call me and I'll come and redo it. So that's why, another reason why the maps are important. Helps the loggers do their job well.
So where exactly is that point right there, Jerry?
We're right here, and if you remember, north is over here, the Moon Lindley Road is north of us, and we're standing right here, and the corner is right here behind us to our west just a little bit, and there the corner is right there. So you just have to orient your map a little bit and point it north and look around your surroundings just a little bit, and you can tell right where you are.
So if a logger gets out here and he doesn't see the corner, or he doesn't see the tape,
right,
and he doesn't take the time to call you and say, hey Jerry, I think the line, someone pulled the tape, I can't see the line. What kind of exposure is he putting himself to?
Well, he's really doing something that he shouldn't do for his own benefit, because it's going to be a problem for him. And if he's dealing with a reputable outfit, whether it's a buyer or a consultant or whomever, that person, that forester or timber buyer, would be certainly willing to come out and redo that, because they also do not want to get into a situation where you've got an overcut and a trespass harvest, that type of thing. It's just not something that's very productive, and it doesn't give our industry a good name.
So taking the extra time, the extra precaution, so to speak, the extra phone call, really could save a lot of headaches in the long run.
It really could, and as I said earlier, in today's world with cell phones, you know, you can get a hold of people pretty easy. Everybody's got their cell phone right in their pocket, so it's easy to get a hold of people, or even a text. Sometimes you can make a text go through when you can't get a phone call to go through. So it's really no excuse really for not reaching out for some help.
In addition to boundaries, it's critical that everyone associated with the harvest operation know the SMZs and any buffer rules that may apply on the site.
The rules I use, of course, are based on the Forest Products Guidelines and the River Basin Rules the state of North Carolina uses. As a practitioner, the way I mark the buffer is I vary the width of my buffer based on how large the creek is and how steep the terrain around it is and what type of river basin we're in. For example, I have painted off buffers that were 200 feet wide. If it's a large river and steep ground, easily I would paint off a buffer maybe 200 feet wide. A really small creek, one that you could just step across, that barely may not even have any water in it at all, but is washed down to the bare dirt, those are streams that I would buffer maybe 20 feet, 25 feet on either side. And I paint those buffers off with blue paint, and so the loggers know when they approach that creek and see the blue paint, they know that they're getting into a stream buffer zone.
We've had some issues with the buffer zones. You know, it's the extra layer on top of the SMZs. How do you figure that out and convey that to your crews?
Well, normally if I have an issue there, I would just widen my buffer. I just take up a little bit of extra land in the buffer, and I have found that it works better for the loggers. It makes it easier on them. Logging is tough work. It's hot, it's difficult, it's demanding physically. When those guys come out here, they don't need me to make their job any harder. They need me to make their job easier. So that's why I paint the buffers with clear blue paint. The property lines are marked with pink ribbon, so it makes it easier for them to do. I want them to do their job well, and I want to help them do their job well.
What resources do you use as a consultant to make sure you're taking that into consideration?
I use the tax maps at the local county level. They've really come a long way in recent years on the GIS system as far as putting some of this information on their sites. The North Carolina Forest Service is also a good resource, and the North Carolina Forestry Association also has information on that. So it's kind of a combination of different materials, and sometimes they overlap. But it's better to have too much information than not enough.
Maps also provide information that can be shared with neighboring landowners.
What about the landowner himself, herself, and the adjacent landowners? How much communication work do you do with those folks?
The landowner themselves, you know, the world is so much easier now to work in on some things. So you can send a landowner a text. The loggers are moving over to your tract. They're moving there tomorrow. I'm going to go check on them tomorrow. Just want to let you know. So, you know, you're done. It can take, 20 seconds. As far as the adjacent landowners, sometimes I notify them, sometimes I don't. It depends a little bit on the project. This particular tract, the landowner to the west is a family member of this landowner. And I actually happened to run into the gentleman while I was doing my field work. So he knew this was going to be happening. He didn't know exactly when, but he knew it was going to be happening. And I had a good conversation with him at that time, and I didn't see any issues with him. So it all depends on the situation. I've handled some jobs before in more urban areas, we'll say, and those sometimes require more latitude as far as who you notify. And even though they may not be the landowner, you still sometimes, just for PR's sake, you want to make sure people are kept informed.
Have you ever had situations where you've had boundary line issues?
I've had a few, thankfully not many. In my career, I've really only had to have just a few projects surveyed. Maybe it's because I had quite a few years' experience before I became a consultant, and I did a lot of property line work. I'm not a surveyor. I can't legally mark corners and set corners, but I can locate property lines based on existing evidence, and I've had lots of experience with that. So I may be a little more experienced at that than some other people, but it's every now and then I have to call a surveyor. I'll go out and I'll look for a property line. I can't make it work. I can't make it fit. And you have to be able to know when something is kind of above your pay grade, as they say in the military. And I'll bring in a surveyor and get him to locate a property line for me before I conduct a timber sale. I've had to do that on occasion.
When boundary lines get unclear, the not so pleasant cases of timber trespass or timber theft may come into play. This is one thing we should all strive to avoid, especially since isolated cases can work their way up to the legislative arena in Raleigh.
A lot of the industry people who are reputable, which is most of them, if they cut over the line, they want to pay the landowner they've aggrieved what they owe them, and they want to pay them in a timely manner. Timber theft's a whole different issue. We could spend 2 days talking about it. But once again, I think it's a minor issue when you're dealing with reputable people, very, very minor. A lot of people have it happen to them, but if you start asking those people some questions, you get a series of no's. Did you hire a consultant to help you with the sale? No. Did you have a written contract? No. Did you hire anybody that was a North Carolina Forestry Association member, a reputable buyer? Well, no, guy called me on the phone or came by the house. And so they have done some things on their part up front that didn't help their position any. It's not their fault that they had timber stolen from them, but they didn't avail themselves on some resources they could have used. A lot of times these people have not contacted North Carolina Forest Service. They can give really good information and advice, and they may not have been called either. So the folks have got some issues that are hard to overcome based on who they dealt with to begin with.
It's imperative that boundary lines are followed. If you have any questions when you're on a site, please take the time to reach out and use reliable resources to define the proper boundary lines. It will save time, money, and of course, a lot of headaches down the road.
Jerry, thanks for coming out and sharing some time with us this morning and helping us out. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, Chris. Glad to do it.
Thanks for watching the Top Update. Here are some important reminders about the Forestry Association's Timber Operations Professional Program. Remember to sign the class roster. Your facilitator will send in that sheet as proof you completed the training. Also, make sure you have the invoice form to send in your annual registration fee and keep your contact information up to date. The info you provide on this form is where future reminders about the TOP program will be sent. The TOP deadline is June 30th every year. If for some reason you do not complete the TOP update and pay the annual fee by June 30th, you will no longer be considered trained. If you do miss the June 30th deadline, there are 2 ways to be reinstated. Within 3 months, by September 30th, you can make up the missed training and pay a reinstatement fee of $280. After September 30th, the only option is to repeat the TOP 2-day initial training class. Please pay attention to the June 30th deadline and keep your training up to date. If you have any questions about the TOP program or your training status, please contact me at the Forestry Association. You can also check our website at scforestry.org for the latest updates. As an added benefit, everyone who is TOP trained will receive the Forestry Association Journal, providing information on the TOP program and to help you stay current on issues affecting our industry. We hope this information will help you improve safety, productivity, and environmental protection on your job. Thanks for your hard work and for all you do for the logging profession.